The Oklahoma Bloodbath, the truck driver who slaughtered 14 men over a stolen diesel tank. The sun hung low over the vast Oklahoma plains, casting long shadows across the dusty parking lot of the Red River truck stop just outside Tulsa. It was a Tuesday afternoon in late September, and the air still carried the thick humidity of summer, making every breath feel heavy. Rows of 18-wheelers sat idle, their chrome exhaust stacks gleaming in the fading light, while the constant hum of idling engines created a rhythmic backdrop to the quiet conversations happening inside the diner. Marcus Webb had been driving trucks for 23 years, and in that time he'd seen just about everything the road had to offer. At 47 years old, his weathered face told stories of countless nights spent behind the wheel, his calloused hands gripping the steering wheel through rainstorms, blizzards, and scorching desert heat. His Peterbilt 579 was more than just a vehicle. It was his office, his sanctuary, and his livelihood. The deep blue cab had been meticulously maintained, every surface cleaned and polished, the chrome accessories shining like mirrors. Inside, photos of his daughter Emily were taped to the dashboard, reminding him why he spent weeks away from his small ranch house in Enid, hauling freight across the country. Marcus pushed through the glass doors of the truck stop, the cool air conditioning a welcome relief from the oppressive heat outside. The diner was moderately busy, with a handful of drivers scattered across the red vinyl booths, nursing coffee and picking at plates of chicken-fried steak and mashed potatoes. He nodded to a few familiar faces before heading to the counter, where a waitress named Donna, who'd been working there for as long as he could remember, greeted him with a tired smile. "The usual, Marcus?" she asked, already reaching for the coffee pot. "You know it, Donna, and maybe some of that peach pie if there's any left." Before we continue with Marcus's story, if you're enjoying this content, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. Now back to the story. Marcus settled into his regular booth by the window where he could keep an eye on his truck. It was a habit born from years of experience. You never knew what might happen in the 30 minutes it took to eat a meal. He'd heard stories of drivers who'd had their cargo stolen, their fuel siphoned, or worse. The trucking community was tight-knit, but the world around them could be unpredictable and sometimes dangerous. As he waited for his food, Marcus scrolled through messages on his phone. There was a text from Emily, his 19-year-old daughter, asking when he'd be home. She was in her sophomore year at Oklahoma State University in Stillwater, studying agricultural business, and they'd planned to have dinner together when he finished this run. Another message was from his dispatcher, confirming his next load, a delivery to Kansas City that would leave in 2 days. Donna brought his coffee and pie, setting them down with practiced efficiency. "How's the road treating you, hon?" "Same as always, long and lonely, but it pays the bills." "I hear that," she said, glancing around the diner. "You be careful out there. Tommy was in here yesterday saying someone's been hitting trucks over in Creek County, siphoning diesel right out of the tanks." Marcus frowned, his jaw tightening slightly. "How much are they taking?" "Enough to notice. Tommy said he lost about 100 gallons between stops. That's real money, you know." He did know. At current prices, that was several $100s worth of fuel, and more importantly, it could leave a driver stranded if they weren't paying attention to their gauges. Marcus made a mental note to be extra vigilant. After finishing his meal, Marcus paid his tab and headed back outside. The sun had dipped lower on the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. He did his routine walk-around inspection, checking the tire pressure, examining the coupling between the cab and trailer, and testing the brake lights. Everything looked fine. His fuel gauge read 3/4 full, more than enough to make it to his delivery point in Amarillo the next morning. He climbed into the cab, started the engine, and felt the familiar rumble beneath him. The CB radio crackled to life as he pulled out of the parking lot, voices of other drivers chattering about traffic conditions, speed traps, and weather reports. Marcus merged onto Highway 412 heading west, settling into the comfortable rhythm of the road. The steering wheel felt natural in his hands, and he watched the flat Oklahoma landscape roll past his windows as the sky slowly darkened. The route took him through small towns with names like Glencoe and Ripley, places that seemed frozen in time with their grain elevators and water towers rising above the prairie. Traffic was light, mostly other commercial vehicles and the occasional passenger car heading home after a long day. Marcus kept his speed steady at 65, his eyes constantly scanning the road ahead and checking his mirrors. About 2 hours into the drive, somewhere between Perry and Cherokee, he pulled into a small rest area to stretch his legs and use the restroom. The facility was basic, just a couple of buildings with bathrooms and vending machines, surrounded by a few picnic tables and a strip of grass. Only one other truck was there, its driver nowhere in sight. Marcus parked near the edge of the lot, killed the engine, and hopped down from the cab. The night air had cooled considerably, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of prairie grass and distant rain. He walked to the restroom, his boots crunching on the gravel, and took care of business quickly. When he came back out, he paused to look up at the stars, which were beginning to emerge in the darkening sky. Moments like this reminded him why he loved the job despite its hardships. There was a freedom to the road that he'd never found anywhere else. As he approached his truck, something felt off. Marcus couldn't quite place it at first, but his instincts, honed over 2 decades of driving, were screaming at him. He quickened his pace and circled around to the fuel tank on the driver's side. What he saw made his blood run cold. The protective cap was gone, and a thin stream of diesel fuel was dripping onto the asphalt, forming a small puddle that reflected the dim overhead lights. Someone had drilled into his saddle tank, a crude, desperate method of theft that left the tank damaged and leaking. Marcus dropped to one knee, running his hand along the metal to assess the damage. The hole was small, maybe a 1/4 inch in diameter, but it was enough to drain his fuel slowly and steadily. Son of a... He caught himself standing up and looking around the rest area with new eyes. The other truck was still there, but its windows were dark. Whoever had done this was either long gone or hiding somewhere nearby. Marcus pulled out his phone and checked his fuel gauge remotely through the truck's app. He'd lost nearly 50 gallons, and it was still leaking. His mind raced through options. He was in the middle of nowhere, at least 30 miles from the nearest town with a proper truck repair facility. He could try to patch the hole temporarily with epoxy or tape, but that was a risky solution at best. The bigger problem was that someone had targeted him specifically, and he needed to know why. Marcus walked over to the other parked truck and knocked on the driver's door. No response. He knocked harder, calling out, "Hey, anybody in there?" Still nothing. He tried the handle and the door swung open to reveal an empty cab. Strange. No driver in sight, truck unlocked. It didn't add up. He returned to his Peterbilt and climbed into the cab, pulling out his CB radio handset. "Breaker 19, this is Blue Thunder looking for any drivers who might have come through the rest area on 412 in the last hour. Got a situation here. Anybody copy?" Static filled the cab for a moment before a gravelly voice responded. "This is Midnight Runner. I copy you, Blue Thunder. What's your 20 and what kind of situation we talking about?" "I'm at the rest area about mile marker 38 westbound. Someone drilled my fuel tank while I was in the facilities. You see anything unusual on your way through?" "Negative, Blue Thunder. I came through about 45 minutes ago and it was empty then. You call the local authorities yet?" Marcus hesitated. Getting the police involved meant paperwork, statements, and hours of waiting around. "Not yet. Trying to figure out my next move first." "Well, be careful out there, brother. I heard stories about fuel thieves working this stretch. They're getting bolder." "Appreciate the heads up. Blue Thunder out." Marcus set the handset down and leaned back in his seat, trying to think clearly. The rational part of his brain told him to call the cops, file a report, and deal with the insurance company. But another part, a part fueled by frustration and anger at being violated in this way, wanted to find whoever did this and make them understand what they'd cost him. He decided to do a thorough inspection of the area first. Grabbing his heavy-duty Maglite flashlight from under the seat, he climbed back down and began searching the rest area systematically. The beam of light swept across picnic tables, trash cans, and patches of grass, looking for any clues that might identify the thief. Behind the restroom building, he found fresh tire tracks, not from a big rig but from a pickup truck or van. The tread pattern was distinct, with aggressive knobs that suggested off-road capabilities. Following the tracks, he discovered discarded plastic bottles and what looked like a crude hand pump mechanism, the kind used for transferring fluids. So they were siphoning the diesel into containers, probably to sell it or use in their own vehicles. Marcus photographed everything with his phone, making sure to get clear images of the tire tracks and the equipment. Then he noticed something else, a small piece of paper caught under a rock near where the tracks ended. He picked it up and unfolded it carefully. It was a receipt from a hardware store in Enid, dated 3 days earlier, listing the purchase of a drill bit set and fuel transfer pump. The name on the credit card was partially visible, D. Hutchins. His hands trembled slightly as he stared at the receipt. Enid was his hometown. This wasn't some random opportunistic thief. This was someone who might have followed him, might know who he was. The violation suddenly felt much more personal. Marcus returned to his truck and sat in the cab, door open, feet resting on the step. He needed to make a decision. The smart move was still to call the police and let them handle it. But something about the whole situation nagged at him. If these thieves were operating in his area, targeting drivers from his own community, then they needed to be stopped before someone got hurt. He pulled up a contacts list on his phone and found the number for Jake Morrison, a deputy with the Garfield County Sheriff's Department and an old friend from high school. It was late, but Jake had told him years ago to call any time if he needed help on the road. Marcus pressed dial and waited. "Marcus Webb, as I live and breathe," Jake's voice came through, sounding tired but alert. "What time is it?" "Sorry to wake you, Jake. I got a problem, and I think it's bigger than just me." He explained the situation, the drilled tank, the evidence he'd found, the receipt with a local name on it. Jake listened without interrupting, and Marcus could hear him moving around, probably getting dressed. "Where exactly are you?" Jake asked. "Rest area on 412, about 38 miles west of Perry. That's out of my jurisdiction, but I'll make some calls. In the meantime, don't touch anything else. You did good documenting it, but we need to preserve that scene. I'm going to have the local deputies meet you there, probably within 20 minutes. Can you wait?" "Yeah, I can wait." "Jake, that name on the receipt, D. Hutchins. Ring any bells?" There was a pause. "Might be Danny Hutchins. Small-time troublemaker. Been in and out of the system for petty theft and drug possession. Last I heard, he was living somewhere around Kremlin. You think he's behind this?" "I don't know, but it's a lead." "Let the law handle this, Marcus. I know how you get when you're angry, but you can't take matters into your own hands." "I'm not planning to. Just want to make sure these guys are caught before they hit someone else." After hanging up with Jake, Marcus walked around his truck again, this time looking at it with fresh eyes. The Peterbilt represented everything he'd worked for: his independence, his ability to provide for Emily, his pride in doing an honest day's work. Having it damaged by some low-life thief felt like an attack on his entire way of life. Headlights appeared in the distance, growing brighter as they approached. 2 patrol cars from the Noble County Sheriff's Department pulled into the rest area, their light bars creating a strobing effect against the darkness. 4 deputies emerged, and Marcus walked over to meet them, his hands visible and his demeanor calm and cooperative. The lead deputy, a stocky man in his 50s with a grey mustache, introduced himself as Sergeant Randall. "You the one who called this in?" "My friend Jake Morrison with Garfield County called it in on my behalf. I'm Marcus Webb, owner of that Peterbilt over there." He pointed to his truck. "Tell me what happened." Marcus walked them through the entire sequence of events, showing them the drilled tank, the tire tracks, and the equipment he'd found. He handed over his phone with the photos he'd taken and mentioned the receipt, which was now sitting on his dashboard to avoid contaminating it with fingerprints. Sergeant Randall examined everything carefully, taking his own photographs and measurements. One of the younger deputies began cordoning off the area with crime scene tape, while another took detailed notes. The process was methodical and thorough, and Marcus found himself growing impatient despite understanding its necessity. "Mr. Webb, I need you to understand something," Randall said, his voice serious. "We've had a string of these incidents over the last month. 4 other trucks hit. All the same MO: drill the tank, siphon the fuel, leave minimal evidence. But you're the first one who's been able to provide us with anything concrete. That receipt could be the break we need. How much fuel we talking about total?" "Probably close to 800 gallons across all the incidents. At retail prices, we're looking at over $3,000 in stolen property. Add in the damage to the tanks, and it's closer to 15 grand. Marcus whistled low. "They're not just opportunists, then. They're running an operation." "Exactly. And operations like this tend to escalate. We need to shut them down before someone gets hurt. The sergeant paused, studying Marcus's face in the harsh glow of the flashlights. Your friend Jake said you're from Enid. That receipt bothers me. If this is Danny Hutchins, and if he somehow knows you or targeted you specifically, we might be dealing with something more complicated than simple theft. A chill ran down Marcus's spine. You think he followed me? I don't know yet, but I want you to be careful. These guys might be watching truck stops looking for high-value targets. Your rig is clean, well-maintained. It stands out. Makes you look like someone who takes care of his equipment, which means you probably keep your tanks full. The deputies spent another 40 minutes processing the scene. They found additional evidence, footprints that matched work boots, cigarette butts that could provide DNA, and more tire track impressions that they photographed from multiple angles. When they were finally finished, Randall approached Marcus with a card. We're going to need you to come into the station tomorrow to make a formal statement. Can you do that? I've got a delivery in Amarillo at 8 a.m. Could swing by on my way back, maybe around 2 in the afternoon. That works. In the meantime, we need to get your truck towed to a facility where they can patch that tank properly. I can recommend a place in Perry that does good work and won't charge you an arm and a leg. Marcus nodded, already calculating the costs in his head. The lost fuel, the repair work, the time off the road. This little incident was going to set him back at least a couple grand, maybe more depending on what his insurance covered, and that was assuming the thieves didn't strike again. As the deputies prepared to leave, one of them approached with a concerned look. Sir, Sergeant Randall wanted me to tell you, we ran that name, Danny Hutchins. He's got a brother, Wayne Hutchins, who's been in trouble for assault and armed robbery. If they're working together, you need to watch your back. I appreciate the warning. The patrol cars pulled out, leaving Marcus alone with his damaged truck and a growing sense of unease. He called the tow service Randall had recommended, and they promised to have someone there within an hour. While he waited, he sat in the cab and tried to make sense of everything. His phone buzzed with a text from Emily. Dad, you okay? Haven't heard from you tonight. He typed back. Had some truck trouble, but I'm fine. Might be delayed getting home. Love you. Love you too. Be safe. The tow truck arrived just before midnight, and the driver, a grizzled veteran named Carl, who'd been in the business for 30 years, took one look at the drilled tank and shook his head. Damn shame. This is the third one I've seen this month. These thieves are getting out of control. You know anything about the Hutchins brothers? Marcus asked as they prepared to hook up the Peterbilt. Carl paused, wrench in hand. Danny and Wayne? Yeah, I know 'em. White trash from way back. Their old man ran a chop shop out in the sticks until he got sent up for receiving stolen property. Boys learned the family business, if you know what I mean. Word is they've been stealing anything that ain't nailed down to feed their meth habits. Meth. Great. Look, I don't know if they're the ones who did this, but if they are, you need to be real careful. Wayne's got a mean streak a mile wide. Did 3 years in McAllister for beating a guy half to death outside a bar in Ponca City. Both of them are unpredictable when they're high, and they're high most of the time. The warning echoed what the deputy had said, and Marcus felt his anger transforming into something colder and more focused. He wasn't afraid. Fear had never been his style. But he was beginning to understand that this situation could turn dangerous quickly if he wasn't smart about it. They got the Peterbilt loaded onto the flatbed, and Carl drove carefully toward Perry, while Marcus followed in the tow truck's cab. The repair shop was closed for the night, but Carl had a key and let them into the secured lot. He helped Marcus disconnect the trailer and position the truck where the mechanics could work on it first thing in the morning. You need a ride somewhere? Carl asked. I can call a friend to pick me up. How long you think the repairs will take? If they start early and the parts are available, maybe 4 or 5 hours. Call the shop around 7 and they'll give you a better estimate. Marcus thanked him and watched the tow truck disappear into the night. Then he pulled out his phone and called the one person he knew he could count on, no matter the time or circumstances, his old service buddy, Tommy Reeves. Tommy answered on the third ring, voice thick with sleep. This better be important. It's Marcus. I need a favor. Where are you? Perry, got my truck vandalized, fuel tank drilled. I'm stuck here overnight waiting for repairs. There was rustling on the other end, and Tommy's voice became more alert. Vandalized. What the hell happened? Marcus explained the situation again, and he could hear Tommy moving around, probably getting dressed. "Stay put. I'm in Stillwater, so I can be there in 40 minutes. We'll get you set up somewhere, and tomorrow we'll figure this out." "Tommy, you don't have to—" "Shut up, Marcus. We're brothers, remember? Army doesn't care if you're retired. You're still mine to look after. See you soon." True to his word, Tommy pulled up in his Ford F-250 38 minutes later. He was a big man, 6'3", and built like a linebacker, with a shaved head and arms covered in military tattoos. They'd served together in Iraq, gone through hell and come back changed but still standing. If there was anyone Marcus trusted to have his back, it was Tommy. They embraced briefly, the kind of quick backslapping hug that men who face death together share. Tommy looked at the Peterbilt on the lot and shook his head. "Damn, brother, they really did a number on you. Could have been worse. Could have been better, too. Come on, let's get you to a hotel and get some food in you. You look like hell." They drove to a small motel on the edge of Perry, and Tommy insisted on paying for the room despite Marcus's protests. In the attached diner, they ordered coffee and late-night breakfast specials, while Marcus filled Tommy in on every detail. "So you think these Hutchins brothers are behind it?" Tommy asked, working on a plate of eggs and hash browns. "The evidence points that way. Receipt had a name. Deputies confirmed Danny's been working this area, and apparently he's got a violent brother who's been in prison." "And you're planning to what, exactly?" Marcus met his friend's eyes. "I'm planning to give my statement to the police, get my truck fixed, and go back to work. What else would I do?" "Don't bullshit me, Marcus. I know that look. You're thinking about tracking these guys down yourself. I'm thinking they need to be stopped before they hurt someone." Tommy leaned back in the booth, studying his friend. "You remember what happened last time you went down this road? Colorado? That guy who tried to carjack you? That was different." "How?" "He pulled a gun on me. This is just property crime. Property crime that's personal. They hit you in your hometown, Marcus. That receipt proves they might have targeted you specifically. This ain't random, and you know it." Marcus couldn't argue with that logic. The more he thought about it, the more convinced he became that this wasn't just bad luck. But what could he do about it that the police weren't already doing? "Look," Tommy continued, "I get it, I'd be pissed too. But you got a daughter who needs you alive and out of prison. Emily's counting on you to be there for her, not chasing down meth-head criminals in the middle of Oklahoma. So I just let them get away with it." "You let the cops do their job. That receipt is solid evidence. They'll track down Hutchins, bring him in, and hopefully flip him on his brother. Justice happens, nobody gets hurt. That's how it's supposed to work." Marcus wanted to believe him, but years of being self-reliant on the road had taught him that sometimes you had to take care of your own problems. Still, Tommy had a point about Emily. She'd already lost her mother to cancer 5 years ago. Losing her father to some stupid act of vigilante justice would destroy her. "You're right," he finally admitted. "I'll let the law handle it." "Good. Now finish your food and get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be a long day." They finished eating in companionable silence, the kind that only exists between people who've shared foxholes and trauma. Tommy drove Marcus back to the motel and made sure he got into his room safely before heading back to Stillwater, with a promise to check in the next day. Marcus lay on the lumpy motel bed, staring at the water-stained ceiling and trying to quiet his mind. But sleep wouldn't come. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw that drilled fuel tank. Imagined the smirk on Danny Hutchins' face as he walked away with hundreds of dollars worth of stolen diesel. The violation of it burned in his gut like acid. He picked up his phone and did something he knew he shouldn't. He started searching for information about Danny and Wayne Hutchins online. Social media profiles, court records, old news articles about their father's arrest. It was easy to build a picture of them. Lifelong criminals from a criminal family, cycling through the system without ever really paying for their crimes. Danny's Facebook page was public, filled with photos of modified pickup trucks, hunting rifles, and thinly veiled references to illegal activities. Several of the photos showed him at what looked like an isolated property, possibly their family's old place. Marcus zoomed in on the backgrounds, trying to identify landmarks or addresses. One photo caught his attention, a recent post from 2 weeks ago showing Danny standing next to a primer gray Dodge pickup with oversized tires. The caption read, New hunting rig, ready for anything. The tire tread in the photo looked similar to the tracks Marcus had seen at the rest area. Not proof, but another piece of circumstantial evidence. He kept scrolling until he found what he was looking for, a location tag on one of Wayne's posts from a month ago. Hutchins Family Farm near Kremlin, Oklahoma. Marcus pulled up Google Maps and found the approximate location. It was remote, accessible only by dirt roads. The perfect place to run illegal operations away from prying eyes. A plan began forming in his mind, even as the rational part of his brain screamed at him to stop. He could drive out there, just to look around, not to confront anyone, just to confirm if the tire tracks matched. Maybe get a license plate number to give to the deputies. Strictly reconnaissance, nothing more. He knew it was a bad idea. Tommy's warning echoed in his head, but the anger and frustration were too strong to ignore. These men had targeted him, violated his property, and cost him thousands of dollars. They needed to face consequences, and the justice system moved too slowly. Marcus set an alarm for 6 a.m. and forced himself to close his eyes. Tomorrow he'd get his truck repaired, give his statement to the police, and then, well, he'd figure that out when the time came. For now, he needed rest, even if his churning thoughts made it nearly impossible. When the alarm finally went off, he felt like he'd barely slept. His body ached from tension and his mind was already racing through scenarios. He showered quickly, dressed in his usual work clothes, jeans, boots, and a flannel shirt, and checked out of the motel just as the sun was beginning to paint the eastern sky in shades of pink and gold. The repair shop opened at 7 and Marcus was their first customer. The head mechanic, a lanky guy named Rick with perpetual grease stains under his fingernails, took one look at the damaged tank and whistled. "Yeah, we can fix this, but it ain't going to be cheap. Need to weld a patch over that hole, pressure test the whole system, make sure nothing else got damaged. Looking at about 8 hours of labor plus parts. Best case, we're talking $1,200. Marcus winced but nodded. "Insurance should cover some of it. How soon can you get started?" "Right now if you want. Got a welding rig set up in Bay 3. I'll have my best guy on it." "Do it. I'll be back around 3 to pick it up." He called a local taxi service to take him to the Noble County Sheriff's Station, where Sergeant Randall was waiting with a fresh pot of coffee and a stack of paperwork. The formal statement took nearly an hour, covering every detail of the previous night's events. Marcus handed over the digital photos he'd taken and walked Randall through his timeline. "We sent the receipt to the lab for prints," the sergeant said. "If Danny Hutchins's prints are on it, combined with the other evidence, we've got probable cause for a search warrant. Judge should sign off on it by end of day." "What happens then?" "We execute the warrant, search the property, hopefully find the stolen fuel and the equipment used to steal it. If we're lucky, we catch him in possession and make an arrest. Then we lean on Danny to give up his brother Wayne, and we roll up the whole operation." It sounded neat and tidy, but Marcus had been around long enough to know that real life rarely worked out that cleanly. What if he's already sold the diesel? What if there's no physical evidence left? Then it gets harder, but not impossible. We've got tire tracks, DNA from those cigarette butts, and your testimony. It's not a slam dunk, but it's buildable. You just need to trust the process. There was that phrase again, trust the process. Marcus thanked the sergeant and headed outside, where another taxi was waiting to take him to a nearby diner for lunch. While he waited for his food, he pulled up the map on his phone again, studying the location of the Hutchins property. It was only about 15 miles from where he was sitting. He could be there and back in less than an hour. The waitress brought his burger and fries, but Marcus barely tasted them. His mind was made up, even though every logical part of him knew it was wrong. He needed to see the place for himself, needed to confirm his suspicions. Once he had visual evidence, he'd take it straight to the sheriff and let them handle the rest. After paying his tab, Marcus rented a car from a small agency in Perry, a nondescript silver Nissan Altima that wouldn't attract attention. He programmed the general coordinates into his GPS and headed west on Highway 64, then north on a series of increasingly rural county roads. The landscape opened up into rolling prairie dotted with cattle and the occasional oil pump jack, rhythmically nodding like mechanical birds. The final turn onto Hutchins Road was unmarked, just a gap in the fence line with two deep ruts heading off into the distance. Marcus slowed the car, second-guessing himself one last time. He could still turn around, go back to Perry, wait for his truck to be fixed, and let the professionals handle everything. But he didn't turn around. He eased the Altima onto the dirt road and drove slowly forward, gravel crunching under the tires. The road wound through a stand of scraggly oak trees before opening into a clearing, where a ramshackle farmhouse sat surrounded by outbuildings in various states of decay. Rusted farm equipment littered the property, and several vehicles were parked haphazardly near a large metal barn. Marcus stopped the car about 100 yards short of the main buildings, pulling off to the side behind a cluster of brush. He killed the engine and sat quietly, watching for any signs of movement. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then the barn door opened, and 2 men emerged, their voices carrying across the still morning air. Even from a distance, Marcus could tell they matched the descriptions he'd found online. The shorter one, probably Danny, was thin and wiry with a scraggly beard and a baseball cap worn backward. The bigger one, Wayne, had the thick build of someone who'd spent time in prison lifting weights, his arms covered in tattoos that were visible even from this far away. They were arguing about something, their gestures animated. Marcus wished he could hear what they were saying, but the distance and the breeze made it impossible. He pulled out his phone and started taking photos, zooming in as much as possible. The quality wasn't great, but it was good enough to show faces and the vehicles around them. That's when he saw it, the primer grey Dodge pickup from Danny's Facebook photo, parked just outside the barn. And the tires. Those aggressive off-road treads that matched the tracks from the rest area. Marcus felt a surge of vindication. He'd been right. He was so focused on documenting the scene that he didn't notice the third man emerge from the house behind him until it was too late. A sharp knock on the driver's side window made Marcus jump, his hand instinctively reaching for the door lock. But the man was already standing there, a sawed-off shotgun pointed casually at the glass. "Roll down the window," the man said, his voice muffled but clear in its intent. Marcus's heart hammered in his chest, but he forced himself to stay calm. He'd been in worse situations before, mortar attacks in Baghdad, convoy ambushes on Highway 1. He could handle this. Slowly, he rolled down the window a few inches. "You lost, friend?" the man asked. He was older than the Hutchins brothers, maybe in his 60s, with a grizzled grey beard and eyes that held no warmth. "I must have taken a wrong turn. GPS sent me down here by mistake. I'll just—" "Bullshit. You're that truck driver, the one my boys hit last night." Marcus's blood ran cold. "I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie to me, boy. My boys described you, tall guy, weathered face, driving a blue Peterbilt. They saw your license plate, ran it through a friend who works at the DMV. We know who you are, Marcus Webb from Enid. And now you're here on our property taking pictures. That's what we call criminal trespass." The man gestured with the shotgun. "Get out of the car, slow and easy. Keep your hands where I can see them." Marcus had no choice. He opened the door and stepped out, his hands raised to shoulder height. The man, presumably the Hutchins patriarch, the father who'd done time for the chop shop, kept the shotgun trained on him while calling out toward the barn. "Danny, Wayne, get your asses over here. We got company." The 2 brothers came running, and as they got closer, Marcus could see the family resemblance, the same narrow-set eyes, the same mean curl to their lips. Danny arrived first, his eyes widening in recognition. "That's him. That's the guy from last night. I told you we should have followed up and made sure he didn't see nothing." Wayne, the bigger brother, cracked his knuckles menacingly. "Well, he's here now. Question is, what are we going to do about it?" Marcus kept his voice steady. "The police know I'm here. I told them where I was going. If I don't check in within the hour, they'll send units out to find me." The father laughed, a harsh sound without humor. "Nice try, but we both know that's horseshit. You came out here on your own playing detective, thinking you're some kind of hero. Now you're going to pay for sticking your nose where it don't belong." "You already got caught," Marcus said, trying a different tack. "The receipt you dropped at the rest area had Danny's name on it. They've got tire tracks, fingerprints, DNA. It's over. Hurting me just adds kidnapping and assault to your charges." Danny's face went pale. "Pop, he's lying. I didn't drop no receipt. He's trying to scare us." But the old man's expression had changed, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his features. "You dropped a receipt?" I don't know." Maybe. It was dark, and we were in a hurry. Wayne punched his brother in the shoulder, hard enough to make Danny stumble. "You stupid son of a bitch! You're going to get us all locked up because you can't be bothered to clean up after yourself." "Both of you shut up," the father barked. He turned his attention back to Marcus. "Here's how this is going to work. You're going to give me that phone and any other recording devices you got. Then you're going to forget you ever came out here, forget you ever saw us, and we're all going to go our separate ways. You try to tell the cops anything, and we'll just say you're making it up. Your word against ours. And if I don't agree to those terms—" The shotgun barrel lifted slightly, pointing at Marcus's chest. "Then we solve this problem permanently and bury you somewhere out on the back 40 where nobody's ever going to find you. Make your choice." Marcus's mind raced. He was outnumbered and outgunned, with no backup and no easy escape route. The rental car was blocked by the father's position, and even if he could get to it, they'd shoot out the tires before he made it 10 feet. His only real option was to comply and hope he could figure out a way to turn the tables later. "All right," he said slowly. "You win, I'll give you the phone and I'll leave." We never had this conversation. He reached slowly into his pocket, pulling out his smartphone. But as he extended it toward the old man, his fingers worked quickly across the screen, opening the camera app and hitting record on the video function before handing it over. The movement was subtle, practiced from years of documenting his travels, and none of the Hutchins family seemed to notice. The father took the phone and smashed it on the ground, grinding it under his boot heel until the screen shattered into pieces. "Any others?" "No, that's it." "Wayne, check him." The big man stepped forward and patted Marcus down roughly, checking pockets and pulling out his wallet. He flipped it open, examining the driver's license and credit cards. Marcus Webb, Enid, Oklahoma. Just like we thought. Trucker's license, concealed carry permit. "Wait, you carrying?" "It's in my truck, which is getting repaired in Perry. I'm clean." Wayne tossed the wallet back to Marcus, who caught it awkwardly. The father gestured toward the rental car with the shotgun. "Get in your car and get out of here. We see you again, we won't be so friendly." Marcus walked backward to the Altima, not wanting to turn his back on them. He got in, started the engine, and carefully turned the car around on the narrow road. As he drove away, he watched them in the rearview mirror. They stood there watching until he was out of sight, the father's shotgun still cradled in his arms. Only when he was back on the paved county road did Marcus allow himself to breathe normally. His hands were shaking slightly on the steering wheel, adrenaline flooding his system now that the immediate danger had passed. He'd been lucky. They could have killed him, and no one would have known where to look. Tommy had been right. He'd been an idiot to come out here alone. But he'd also gotten what he needed. Even though his phone was destroyed, the video had been uploading to his cloud storage in real time, activated by a feature he'd enabled months ago. Everything from the moment he handed over the phone until they smashed it was recorded. Their faces, their voices, their threats. It was all there, backed up online where the Hutchins family couldn't touch it. He drove back to Perry faster than he should have, his mind already planning his next move. The sheriff's station was his first stop, where he found Sergeant Randall finishing up paperwork at his desk. "Mr. Webb, you're back early. Something wrong?" Marcus collapsed into a chair and told him everything. The decision to scout the property, the confrontation, the threats, and most importantly, the evidence he'd managed to preserve. Randall's expression went from concerned to angry, to grimly satisfied as the story unfolded. "You're lucky to be alive," the sergeant said. "But I'll be damned if you didn't just hand us exactly what we need. That cloud storage footage shows them making threats, confirms their involvement, and gives us even more probable cause. We can get that search warrant signed within the hour and have a tactical team out there by nightfall." "They're dangerous," Marcus warned. "Old man Hutchins had a sawed-off shotgun, and I'm betting they've got more weapons stashed around that property. Which is exactly why we'll go in with sufficient force to handle the situation. I'm going to coordinate with the county SWAT team and the district attorney's office. In the meantime, you need to stay somewhere safe and out of sight. These guys know who you are and where you're from. We can't risk them coming after you before we make the arrests." Marcus thought about his house in Enid, his routine, his predictable patterns. Randall was right. He was vulnerable. "I can stay with a friend in Stillwater. Tommy Reeves, former Army, knows how to watch his six." Good. I want you out of the area until we've got the Hutchins family in custody. Give me your friend's contact information so we can keep you updated on the operation. They spent the next hour going over every detail, with Marcus providing descriptions of the property layout, the locations of the buildings, and the number of vehicles he'd seen. The footage from his cloud storage was downloaded and sent to the district attorney, who immediately approved the search warrant and issued arrest warrants for all 3 Hutchins men, Father, Danny, and Wayne. By the time Marcus left the sheriff's station, it was nearly 5 in the afternoon. His truck was ready at the repair shop, the fuel tank expertly patched and pressure tested. Rick handed him the keys with a grin. Good as new. That's some quality welding work, if I do say so myself. You shouldn't have any more problems with it. Marcus paid the bill, wincing at the final total, but grateful his insurance would cover most of it. He climbed into the familiar cab of his Peterbilt, and for the first time since the whole ordeal began, he felt a sense of normalcy returning. The engine rumbled to life, the dashboard lights glowing in the gathering dusk, and he pulled out of the lot with renewed purpose. He called Tommy from the road. "Hey, I need to take you up on that offer to stay for a few days." "What happened?" "Long story. I'll explain when I get there. Should be in Stillwater in about an hour. I'll have the guest room ready and beer in the fridge. Drive safe, brother." The highway rolled out before him, familiar and comforting. Marcus merged onto I-35, heading north, his truck eating up the miles with steady efficiency. But even as he drove, his mind kept replaying the confrontation at the Hutchins farm. The cold look in the old man's eyes, the casual way he'd held that shotgun, the threats of violence delivered with such matter-of-fact certainty, it all pointed to people who had no respect for the law or human life. He tried to tell himself it was over, that the police would handle it from here. But some nagging voice in the back of his head whispered that it wasn't that simple. Men like the Hutchins family didn't go down quietly. They'd fight, and when they fought, people got hurt. Darkness had fully settled by the time Marcus pulled up to Tommy's house in a quiet suburban neighborhood of Stillwater. His friend was waiting on the front porch, and he helped Marcus back the Peterbilt into the spacious driveway before leading him inside. Over pizza and beer, Marcus laid out the entire story from the beginning. Tommy listened without interrupting, his expression growing more serious with each detail. When Marcus finished, his friend sat back and shook his head. "You got yourself into some deep shit, brother. I know. But you also did what most people wouldn't have the guts to do. You faced them down and got the evidence needed to put them away. That takes balls. Or stupidity. Little bit of both, probably," Tommy said with a slight smile. "Question is, what happens next? You really think the cops can take these guys without someone getting killed?" "I don't know." Randall seemed confident, said they'd use the tactical team, but yeah, I'm worried it could go sideways. They spent the rest of the evening monitoring news feeds and police scanners, waiting for word of the raid, but as midnight approached with no updates, they decided to get some sleep. Tomorrow would bring answers, one way or another. Marcus lay in Tommy's guest room, staring at the ceiling and listening to the familiar sounds of the house settling. His phone, a replacement he'd picked up at a store in Perry, buzzed with a text from Emily. "Dad, where are you? You were supposed to call when you got back to Enid." He typed back. "Change of plans, staying with Tommy for a few days. Everything's fine, just some work stuff came up. Love you." "Love you too, be safe, okay? You're scaring me a little." "I'm always safe. Get some rest. School starts back up soon." He put the phone down and closed his eyes, willing sleep to come. But every time he drifted off, he saw the Hutchins family, saw those dead eyes staring at him, heard the threats echoing in his mind. It was going to be a long night. Morning came with a phone call from Sergeant Randall at 6:30. Marcus grabbed his phone groggily, heart already pounding. "Yeah?" "Mr. Webb, just wanted to update you. We executed the search warrant on the Hutchins property at 0400 hours this morning. Tactical team went in expecting resistance. And? Place was abandoned. Looks like they cleared out sometime yesterday evening, probably right after you left. Took everything of value, vehicles, equipment, personal belongings. Found some evidence of their operation in the barn, but the brothers and their father are gone." Marcus sat up in bed, fully awake now. "They ran." "Appears so. We've issued an APB for all 3 of them, and we're coordinating with state police and federal authorities since they may have crossed state lines. But yeah, they're in the wind, so they're still out there. Unfortunately, yes, which means you need to stay vigilant. We don't know if they'll try to retaliate or if they're just trying to get as far away as possible. I'd recommend you vary your routines, stay with friends, and consider carrying that concealed weapon you're permitted for. After hanging up, Marcus sat on the edge of the bed processing the information. The Hutchins family was on the run, which meant they were desperate. Desperate men did unpredictable things. He needed to be ready for anything. Tommy appeared in the doorway, 2 cups of coffee in hand. Heard your phone. What's the news? They're gone. Cleared out before the raid. Shit. Yeah. They drank their coffee in silence, both men understanding the implications. This wasn't over. In fact, it might just be getting started. Over the next few days, Marcus tried to maintain some semblance of normalcy. He took on short local hauls that kept him close to Stillwater, always checking his mirrors, always aware of his surroundings. Tommy had given him a spare Glock 19 to keep in the truck, and Marcus kept it loaded and within easy reach. Emily called every evening, and he tried to keep his voice light and unconcerned, not wanting to worry her. But she knew him too well. "Dad, something's wrong. I can hear it in your voice. Just dealing with some work stuff, honey. Nothing for you to worry about." "Is it about your truck getting vandalized? Jake Morrison's girlfriend mentioned something about it when I saw her in town." Marcus cursed silently. Small-town gossip traveled fast. "Yeah, that's part of it, but the police are handling it. I'm staying safe, I promise. I'm coming home this weekend. I want to see you. Emily, you don't need to—" "Dad, I'm coming home. Don't argue with me." He sighed, knowing when he was beaten. "Okay, we'll have dinner Saturday night. Your choice of restaurant." "Deal, I love you." "Love you too, sweetheart." On Friday afternoon, Sergeant Randall called again. "Got some news. Border Patrol picked up Danny Hutchins trying to cross into Mexico near Del Rio, Texas. He's in custody." "What about Wayne and the father?" "No sign of them yet, but we're questioning Danny, seeing if he'll cooperate. His lawyer's already talking about a plea deal if he gives up the others." "Will he?" "Hard to say. These guys have a strong code about not snitching, but facing 20 years in federal prison has a way of loosening tongues. We'll see." That evening, Marcus decided it was time to go home to Enid. He'd been hiding long enough, and Emily was coming to visit. He thanked Tommy for his hospitality, promised to stay in touch, and headed west on Highway 64 as the sun dipped toward the horizon. The drive was uneventful, and he pulled up to his small ranch house just after dark. Everything looked normal. The motion sensor lights came on as he approached, and the neighbors' dogs barked their usual greeting. But Marcus didn't let his guard down. He did a complete perimeter check before going inside, looking for signs of disturbance or forced entry. The house was exactly as he'd left it, clean, quiet, and empty. He locked all the doors, closed the blinds, and settled into his recliner with a beer and the TV remote. But he couldn't concentrate on the news or any of the shows. His mind kept drifting back to the Hutchins family, wondering where Wayne and the father were, what they might be planning. Saturday morning dawned clear and cold, a typical Oklahoma winter day. Marcus spent the morning doing routine maintenance on his truck, checking fluid levels and tire pressure, making sure everything was in perfect working order. He'd been neglecting these tasks while staying with Tommy, and it felt good to get back into his normal routine. Emily arrived around noon, driving her beat-up Honda Civic that she refused to let him replace, despite his offers. She was beautiful, looking so much like her mother that it sometimes took his breath away. They embraced in the driveway, and he held on a little longer than usual, grateful for her presence. "You okay, Dad?" she asked, pulling back to study his face. "I'm good. Better now that you're here." They spent the afternoon catching up, with Emily telling him about her classes, her friends, and her plans for the upcoming semester. He listened, asking questions and enjoying the sound of her voice, trying to push away the darker thoughts that lurked at the edges of his consciousness. For dinner, Emily chose a local steakhouse where they'd celebrated birthdays and graduations over the years. The place was busy on a Saturday night, filled with families and couples enjoying their meals. Marcus ordered his usual ribeye while Emily went with the chicken fried steak, just like her mother used to. They were halfway through their meal when Marcus's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and saw a text from an unknown number. You should have minded your own business. His blood ran cold. He looked around the restaurant, scanning faces, looking for anything out of place. Nothing seemed immediately threatening, but the message had come from somewhere close. "Dad, what's wrong?" Emily asked, noticing his change in demeanor. "Nothing, honey, just work stuff." He typed back, "Who is this?" The response came immediately. "You know who. Enjoy your dinner with your daughter. Pretty girl, looks just like her mama. Would be a shame if something happened to her." Marcus's hands clenched into fists under the table. They were watching him right now, somewhere in this restaurant or nearby. And they'd threatened Emily. That crossed a line he couldn't ignore. He stood abruptly, pulling out his wallet and throwing cash on the table. "We need to leave now. Dad, what? Don't argue, just come with me, stay close." Emily's eyes widened at the urgency in his voice, but she grabbed her purse and followed him toward the exit. Marcus kept his hand on her shoulder, positioning himself between her and the rest of the restaurant as they moved quickly through the crowded dining room. His other hand went to his waistband, where the Glock was concealed under his jacket. They burst through the front doors into the parking lot, and Marcus scanned the area with trained efficiency. Cars were parked in neat rows under the overhead lights, but shadows pooled between the vehicles. Anywhere could hide a threat. "Get in the truck," he ordered Emily, unlocking the Peterbilt with his key fob. "Lock the doors and get down on the floor." "Dad, you're scaring me." "Do it." She climbed up into the cab while Marcus did a quick circuit around the truck, checking underneath and around the wheels. Nothing seemed tampered with, no suspicious packages or devices. He jumped into the driver's seat and started the engine, his eyes never stopping their constant sweep of the surroundings. As they pulled out of the parking lot, Marcus saw it, a black Chevy Silverado with tinted windows, parked at the far end of the lot with the engine running. As soon as the Peterbilt moved, the Silverado pulled out and began following at a distance. "Stay down," Marcus told Emily, his voice calmer now that he had a clear threat to focus on. "Someone's following us." He grabbed his phone and called 911, keeping one hand on the wheel as he accelerated onto the main road. "This is Marcus Webb. I'm being followed by a black Chevy Silverado, license plate." He squinted at his mirrors, but the distance and darkness made it impossible to read. "Can't get the plate. I'm heading north on Van Buren with my daughter in the vehicle. I have reason to believe the people following us are wanted fugitives Wayne and Eugene Hutchins." The dispatcher's voice was professional and calm. "Sir, what's your current location?" "Just passing Chestnut Street, heading toward the police station." "Good, continue to the station. I'm dispatching units to intercept. Do not stop your vehicle for any reason." The Silverado was gaining on them, closing the distance with aggressive acceleration. Marcus pushed the Peterbilt harder, the big truck responding with a surge of power that pressed them back in their seats. But the pickup was faster and more maneuverable on city streets. "Dad, what's happening?" Emily's voice was small and frightened from where she crouched on the floor of the cab. "Just stay down, baby. We're almost to the police station." He ran a red light at the intersection of Grand and Main, horns blaring from cars that had to brake suddenly. The Silverado followed, now only 2 car lengths behind. Marcus could see 2 figures in the front seats, large men who matched the descriptions of Wayne and his father. The police station was 3 blocks ahead, its lights visible in the darkness. Marcus laid on the horn, the truck's air horn blasting a warning that echoed through the quiet streets. He could hear sirens now, growing louder, converging on their location. The Silverado suddenly accelerated, pulling alongside the Peterbilt's trailer. Marcus saw the passenger window roll down, saw the barrel of a rifle emerge. Without thinking, he yanked the wheel hard to the right, forcing the pickup truck toward the curb. Metal screamed as the vehicles made contact, sparks flying from the grinding collision. The Silverado overcorrected, mounting the sidewalk and slamming into a fire hydrant with a massive spray of water. Marcus didn't slow down, didn't look back. He drove straight to the police station and pulled into the parking lot with a screech of brakes, jumping out and running around to help Emily down from the cab. 2 patrol cars came screaming around the corner, lights and sirens at full blast, heading toward the crash site. Another unit pulled into the lot, and Marcus recognized the officer who emerged, Jake Morrison. "Marcus, you two okay?" Jake asked, already on his radio calling for backup and medical. "We're fine. They rammed us. Tried to shoot at us. Black Silverado crashed into a hydrant 3 blocks south on Van Buren. Stay here. Jake jumped back in his car and tore out of the lot. Marcus held Emily close as she trembled against him, her fear finally breaking through in shaking sobs. "It's okay," he murmured into her hair. "You're safe now, I've got you." More units arrived, and within minutes, word came over the radio that both occupants of the Silverado had been taken into custody. Wayne Hutchins and his father Eugene were being transported to the hospital under guard for treatment of minor injuries before being booked into jail. A detective named Sarah Martinez took their statements inside the station, recording every detail of the evening's events. The threatening text messages, the pursuit through town, the attempted shooting. It all added up to multiple felony charges, including stalking, attempted murder, and assault with a deadly weapon. "They're not getting out this time," Martinez assured them. "Between the evidence you provided earlier, Danny's confession after he was picked up at the border, and tonight's incident, we're looking at decades in prison for both of them. They're done." It was nearly midnight by the time they were allowed to leave. Marcus drove Emily back to the house in his personal truck, the Peterbilt remaining at the station as evidence. She hadn't said much since the initial shock wore off, and he could see her mind working through what had happened. "I'm sorry," he said as they pulled into the driveway. "I never meant for you to be involved in this. It's not your fault, Dad. Those men made their choices." She looked at him with her mother's eyes, strong and steady, despite the trauma. "But I need to understand something. Why did you go to their property alone? Why didn't you just let the police handle it from the beginning?" Marcus turned off the engine and sat in the darkness, considering his answer carefully. "Because I was angry. Because they violated something that belongs to me, and I wanted to make them pay. Because I'm stubborn and proud, and I thought I could handle it myself. And now? Now I know I was wrong. I put both of us in danger because I couldn't let it go. I'm sorry, Emily. I'm so sorry." She reached over and took his hand. "I forgive you, but promise me something. Anything. Promise me you'll let the law handle things from now on. No more playing detective. No more taking matters into your own hands. I need my dad alive and free, not in prison or dead because he tried to be a hero. I promise." They went inside, and Marcus made sure every door and window was locked, every alarm activated. He checked Emily's room twice before finally allowing himself to collapse onto his own bed, exhaustion hitting him like a physical weight. Sleep came quickly, deep and dreamless, the kind that only follows when a crisis finally ends. Sunday morning brought clear skies and fresh snow that had fallen overnight, covering the prairie in a blanket of white. Marcus made breakfast while Emily slept in, scrambling eggs and frying bacon the way she liked it. When she finally emerged, wrapped in one of her mother's old robes that she kept at the house, they ate together in comfortable silence. The phone rang around 10 o'clock. It was Sergeant Randall with an update. "Thought you'd want to know. We executed search warrants on 3 storage units rented by Eugene Hutchins. Found over 600 gallons of stolen diesel, drilling equipment, fuel transfer pumps, and records of sales to various buyers. We're rounding up the buyers now as receivers of stolen property. This whole operation is falling apart." "What about Wayne and Eugene?" "Judge denied bail this morning. They're being held without bond pending trial. Danny's already pleaded guilty to the theft charges and is cooperating fully. He's testifying against his family in exchange for a reduced sentence. The DA thinks we can put Wayne and Eugene away for 25 to 30 years minimum." "Good. That's good. There's one more thing. We found something else in those storage units, plans. Eugene had been keeping detailed notes about your schedule, photos of your truck, even surveillance footage from the truck stop where you usually park. This wasn't random, Marcus. He'd been targeting you specifically for weeks, maybe months." The revelation sent a chill down Marcus's spine. "Why me?" "Best we can figure. Eugene recognized you from when you testified in a theft case about 15 years ago. Guy who got convicted was a friend of his, and he blamed you for the man's prison sentence. This was revenge, pure and simple. He used the diesel theft as a way to hurt you financially, and when that didn't seem like enough, he escalated. After the call ended, Marcus told Emily everything. She listened quietly, processing the information with the same analytical mind that made her excel in school. "That's insane," she finally said. "He held a grudge for 15 years. "Some people can't let things go," Marcus replied, seeing the irony in his own words. Emily returned to Stillwater that afternoon, making Marcus promise again to stay safe and stay out of trouble. He stood in the driveway watching her taillights disappear down the road, feeling both relief that she was okay and pride in the strong woman she'd become. The next few weeks passed in a blur of court appearances, depositions, and media interviews. The story had caught the attention of local news stations, and Marcus found himself reluctantly thrust into the spotlight as the truck driver who'd helped bring down a major theft ring. He hated the attention, but understood it was part of the process. The trial began in early November, with Marcus as the prosecution's star witness. He testified for 3 days, walking the jury through everything from that first violation at the rest area to the harrowing chase through Enid streets. Danny Hutchins testified next, his voice barely above a whisper as he detailed the operation and his father's obsessive planning. Wayne and Eugene Hutchins both took the stand in their own defense, claiming they'd been framed, that the evidence was planted, that Marcus had provoked the confrontation. But the jury didn't buy it. The physical evidence was too strong, the testimony too consistent, the video footage too damning. After 4 hours of deliberation, the jury returned with guilty verdicts on all counts. Wayne received 32 years in federal prison. Eugene got 28 years, with the judge noting that his age and health issues warranted a slightly reduced sentence. Danny, who had cooperated, received 5 years with the possibility of parole after 3. Marcus was in the courtroom when the sentences were read. He felt no satisfaction, no sense of triumph. Just a bone-deep weariness and a hope that this chapter of his life was finally closed. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed him with microphones and cameras. He gave a brief statement. "Justice was served today. I'm grateful to the law enforcement officers and prosecutors who worked this case, and I'm glad these dangerous men are off the streets. Now, I'd like to get back to my life and my work." That evening, he met Tommy and Jake at a local bar for drinks. They raised their glasses in a toast to survival, friendship, and the slow grinding wheels of justice. "You did good, brother," Tommy said. "Could have ended a lot worse." "Should have listened to you from the start," Marcus admitted. "Would have saved everyone a lot of trouble." "Maybe," Jake said, "but maybe things had to play out this way. Sometimes the universe has its own plan." Marcus thought about that as he drove home later that night. The universe's plan had nearly gotten him and Emily killed, but it had also revealed a threat he hadn't known existed. Eugene Hutchins had been watching him for months, planning something that could have escalated even further if left unchecked. In a twisted way, the diesel theft had been a blessing. It brought everything to light before something worse could happen. December brought the first real cold snap, temperatures dropping below freezing and staying there. Marcus went back to work, taking long hauls across the country and finding peace in the familiar rhythm of the road. The Peterbilt ran perfectly, the repaired fuel tank showing no signs of problems. He'd installed additional security cameras and GPS tracking devices, and he never parked anywhere without doing a thorough inspection first. Emily came home for Christmas break, and they decorated the house together, hanging lights and putting up a tree like her mother used to insist on. On Christmas Eve, they attended midnight mass at the little church where Marcus and his wife had been married, and he felt her presence in the flickering candlelight and the sound of hymns. "I miss her," Emily said as they drove home through the quiet streets. "Me too, baby. Every single day. But I'm glad I have you. I don't know what I'd do if something happened to you." "Nothing's going to happen to me. I promised you I'd be more careful, and I meant it." She smiled, that same smile that could light up a room. "Good, because I have plans that include you walking me down the aisle someday and spoiling your grandkids rotten." "Grandkids? You got something you need to tell me?" "Not yet, but someday, and you better be around for it." New Year's Eve found Marcus on the road again, hauling a load of agricultural equipment to Denver. He stopped at the same rest area where his truck had been vandalized months earlier, but this time it was brightly lit and busy with other travelers. He did his walk-around inspection carefully, checking the fuel tanks and looking for any signs of tampering. Everything was secure. Everything was fine. As midnight approached and the new year began, Marcus stood beside his Peterbilt and looked up at the stars scattered across the vast Oklahoma sky. He thought about choices and consequences, about pride and humility, about the thin line between justice and revenge. He thought about how close he'd come to losing everything and how grateful he was for second chances. His phone buzzed with texts, Emily wishing him Happy New Year, Tommy sending a crude joke, Jake checking in to make sure he was safe. Marcus smiled and replied to each one, feeling the warmth of connection even out here in the cold darkness. The road stretched ahead, infinite and full of possibility. There would be more deliveries, more miles, more challenges. But Marcus Webb knew who he was now. Not a vigilante, not a hero, just a man doing his job and protecting what mattered most. And that was enough. He climbed into the cab, started the engine, and pulled back onto the highway. The tires hummed against the pavement, the dashboard lights glowed softly, and the world rolled past his windows in shades of shadow and starlight. Somewhere behind him, 3 men sat in prison cells paying for their crimes. Somewhere ahead, Emily was building her future, bright and full of promise. And Marcus Webb drove on through the night, carrying his cargo and his memories, grateful for the journey and the lessons learned along the way. The Oklahoma bloodbath was over, justice had been served, and life continued its steady march forward. The miles accumulated, each one taking him farther from the past and closer to whatever came next. And for the first time in months, Marcus felt at peace.